Hi, I'm Kyle Bleeker, the pastor of Friends Tustin, and I'm glad you're checking out some of our online content today. Along with our in person gatherings, which are every Sunday at 10 a.m., we have a number of different ways to help people get connected to our community and discover what God, the Bible, and Jesus have to do with your life. So check out our website to learn more or send our team a message directly using one of the links so we can help you find your way. Thanks again for taking the time. Now on to this week's message. Well, I want to tell you a story just to start off. When I was in high school, I occasionally got up to what I would just say is stupid things, okay? I had times where, with my buddies, we would get an idea in our heads, and we would get excited about it, and then we would kind of make a plan for it, and we would rally around it, but they were not always the brightest of ideas. They were not always the most legal of ideas. But they were things that we thought were really, really cool. And for example, one of the things that we decided to do on a Friday night, one night, was we got a little trip together. We went across the border of my state into South Dakota to a spot where you could buy fireworks. And we bought a lot of fireworks, probably my whole paycheck worth of fireworks at that point in time. And then we went and we found an empty field. And we proceeded, this was in Iowa, right? We proceeded to have a bottle rocket war with a number of my buddies, where each of us had a full gross of bottle rockets in our back pockets. We would run around and we would pull them out, we would light them, and we would either throw them or we would shoot them at each other because we thought, what could go wrong, right? So we were out in this empty field, just shooting fireworks at each other, laughing, thinking it was, so much fun. And then, unfortunately, I saw this kind of beautiful spark trail, like flowing through the air towards me. And I look up, and suddenly I saw the sun and the moon and all of the planets immediately at once. And I felt this horrible pain in my chin, because a friend of mine had thrown a bottle rocket in my direction. I had seen kind of the spark trail, and instead of it launching up, it had launched down and hit me right here. I was very, very lucky that it hit me, bounced off to about here, and then exploded, right? But it blew up right in front of my face. And when this explosion went off, right, I started screaming. But we were all kind of screaming at that point. It was like 6 of us, like, ha, 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 right? Like, we were being very, very stupid. And I screamed because I was pretty terrified. I actually put my hand like this, and I saw that I had a little bit of blood that was coming down my chin. And I yelled, and I said, I got hit in the chin, right? What I didn't realize is that I'd gotten hit so hard that my whole bottom jaw was numb, and I couldn't pronounce any words. So I said, I got hit in the chin. And my buddy yells back at me, or yells to my other friend, haha, we got Kyle right in the shin, right? But that's not the case. So they ended up running over to me eventually, right? Because I was on the ground and I couldn't see, I couldn't do anything. I was really struggling in this moment. And they came over and they were checking my pants, right? They were trying to look at my shin. And I said, no. And finally I was like, in the chin. And they looked at me and immediately they started to panic and they picked me up and they took me over to the car. And here's what I am very fortunate about, is the fact that we cleaned it up. And ultimately, to this day, you can't see it under my beard, but if I were to shave, I have a little crescent half-moon scar on my chin where the bottle rocket hit me so hard that it made like a pencil indentation if you took the eraser and hit me. But that's all that I ended up having as kind of long-term effects from this, right? There was no wisdom at any point in time for anything that we did. Every decision that me and my buddies made for that night was a decision, not evil, right? But really dumb. Just lacked insight, lacked awareness, lacked like any sense of like what could actually come out of this. And by the grace of God, I didn't lose an eye. I didn't lose something else, right? Like, we got really, really lucky. And we learned from that experience that you should play with fireworks in other ways, right? But here's the deal. In life, we often have situations that we get excited about. Maybe things that we're going after, things that we think are valuable or that could be fun. And the danger is that as we're making decisions about whether or not to take this path or whether we should take this path, if we should pursue this thing or if we should pursue something else, if we should join this group or if we should maybe align ourselves with someone else, that as we're doing these decisions and trying to discern where to go, the unfortunate thing is that sometimes we don't know. We're not aware of what's actually contributing or where those paths will lead us. And unfortunately, sometimes it can really hurt us, it can break us, or we can find ourselves very, very lost. Wisdom is the ability to look at a path, to see where you are going, and to be able to navigate in such a way that even if the situation is really, really bad, you have integrity and you have character and you have virtue in a way that despite the circumstances or the situation, you are still following the right kind of guideline. You have a bearing or a compass destination that is taking you to where you hope that you ultimately can go. And so we're going to be talking about wisdom over the next number of weeks, and we're going to zoom in on certain topics like wisdom for money, or wisdom for relationships, wisdom for self-control, and see specifically what the Bible and God have to say about how to do these things best and how to follow the path through all the different kind of guiding or all the different things that are calling out to us, so that as we do so, we know that no matter what, we are at least in step with God. And in our world right now, I would say that there is a great need for wisdom. Whether we are parenting, or whether we are working a job, whether we are thinking about politics or social issues, whether or not we are trying to balance our budget or our money, everything that we do, we're constantly trying to figure out what's the decision to make in the midst of this. How can I have wisdom? How can I do this right? And there's a burden that sits on us to be able to make sure that when we take a step, that we hope it's a step in the right way. So Proverbs is this book that it's most well known for the fact that it has these kind of pithy, poetic statements that are really memorable. So in the English language, you might have something like apple a day keeps the doctor away, right? My wife has one that she will tell the boys again and again, which I think is hilarious, but she'll say, snake, not great, and that's it, right? Well, run away. Okay, that's the phrase, right? If you see a snake that's not great, run away. Okay, right? So that's the one that she uses often, which I have told her that doesn't rhyme, but we keep going with it, right? So she loves it. It's great. But if it gets our kids away from a snake, I don't care, right? It works, okay? But there was a time in the life of the nation of Israel where these kind of wisdom statements were really, really important. They were used within the home or they were used within the community to help train people who might be lacking in certain types of insight, or people who were young who wanted to figure out, how do I actually live a good life? What would it look like for me to actually walk a path that I can be proud of? And so there's really three books within the Bible, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job, that are considered the wisdom books that seek to give people an accurate picture of reality, an accurate picture of God, and an accurate picture of ourselves, so that we can understand how to do the relationship between all of these different things. So in the book of Proverbs, which we're going to be looking at, the first 9 chapters are kind of a description of wisdom. It talks a lot about what wisdom is like and what wisdom can do and why it's important. And then you get into chapters 10 through 31, which are all of the kind of little short phrases that Proverbs is really, really known for. And those are ones where, because this was written originally in Hebrew, sometimes they don't translate super well because it's tough to take a language that was that was in a culture that was ancient and to be able to translate it into modern day. So translators have sought really hard, but there's certain phrases that just don't translate perfectly. So if you ever come across a proverb and you're like, well, that one's not very memorable or very funny, then just realize that back in the day, it killed. Like, everybody loved it back in the day, right? But the hope is that we would become wise people who are able to live lives that we're proud of, that we're able to actually have wisdom in a way where we can create the kind of life that we would hope to be able to have. Now, wisdom itself, the word that's used frequently in the book of Proverbs, is it looks like this. So that's wisdom in English. That right there is chachma. That's the word for wisdom. And it's got a little bit of a guttural sound at the beginning, but chachma, right? Wisdom in this way is not just intelligence. It's not just an awareness of details or of knowledge. But wisdom in this way is a skill. It is an art form. It is the ability to actually receive what life is supposed to be and then to be able to live it in a way that you would be proud of. So when you think about a carpenter or a baker, or you think about an architect, or you think about someone who is an athlete, you have all of these people who have actually developed a skill set that enables them to perform in life in a way that really creates something impressive. And that is scratching at a little bit of chachma. Chachma is more than just ideas and I know exactly what to do. It is, no, I actually have embodied and am able to live out a way of existing that enables me to figure out what to do in terms of life. God owns and is the source of all wisdom. God is the one who, at the dawn of creation, when it says that God was actually hovering over the surface of the deep, all of the chaos, chachma, wisdom, is what God used from within himself to take the chaos and to be able to create everything that we see within the first 6 days of creation. So it is God's voice speaking light, speaking water, speaking ground. That is actually the wisdom of God to be able to create all that we have, all the matter and atoms and details that we find within our world. The Jewish people would say that that was God's chachma, his wisdom that enabled him to bring all of that into existence. And Proverbs chapter 8 actually gives a very clear picture of what they call Lady Wisdom. It's the personification of wisdom, which was there at the dawn of creation, through which God brought all things into existence. So for you and I, we are literally just following in the footsteps of God when we take what we know, what we understand, those areas of expertise maybe that we have, and we seek to create out of it something that we're proud of, something that is a benefit to other people, something that blesses or guides or provides protection. That is what we as humans are always seeking to do. And that's why Proverbs says, get wisdom above everything else. Get wisdom. Get the ability to be able to create beauty and strength so that you can be a person who lives a life that isn't diminished, but rather a life that is full and that helps others and that gives glory to God. So I'm going to read from Proverbs chapter 1, just the first 7 verses, because this is it's kind of considered the prologue or the preamble to the rest of the book. Look on the screen, you can follow along, or if you have your Bible, you can go there. But Proverbs chapter 1 starts by saying this: these are the Proverbs of Solomon, David's son, king of Israel. Their purpose is to teach people wisdom and discipline, to help them understand the insights of the wise. Their purpose is to teach people to live disciplined and successful lives, to help them do what is right and just and fair. These proverbs will give insight to the simple, knowledge and discernment to the young, and let the wise listen to these proverbs and become even wiser. Let those with understanding receive guidance by exploring the meaning in these proverbs and parables. the words of the wise and their riddles. And then it ends by saying this: fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. Proverbs sets up a whole bunch of different things just in these first 7 verses. It tells us about the fact that this book was originated by King Solomon, who, if you're familiar with some of the kind of ancient literature, was a man who God gave him any wish that he wanted to be able to ask for. And he chose to ask for wisdom, that he might be able to rule in a good way. And God gave it to him. And so many of the Proverbs that are within the book of the little phrases and poems that are within this book are from Solomon, but not all. There are a number of them that are attributed to different authors in different time periods, and it was kind of compiled. But Solomon kind of gets claim. He gets to put his title down as the editor, maybe, of this book. But the hope is that people will read these things, reflect on them, chew on them, and get to a point where their life is better because they're thinking more clearly about reality. And that's really important because God has created a reality. He's also given us His Word, Scripture, which we believe gives us a clear picture of Him and us and the world. He's also given us Himself, which is a clear example in Jesus Christ of what God is like. But one of the problems that we have in our world today is that people keep narrating a story that doesn't attend to actual reality. And we have to look out that as Christians, we don't do the exact same thing, where when we hear about something going on out in the world, or maybe when we experience something that isn't maybe the thing about ourselves that we're the most fond of, that we don't just skip over that difficult, challenging truth or maybe question so that we can just move on to what we want to be able to do. So I'll give you some clear examples. If I make a mistake, if I get angry or if I get lazy and somebody calls me on it, I really quickly want to narrate and come up with a story for why that's okay or why I didn't do it so that I can protect myself. And in doing so, sometimes what I end up doing is I bend or twist reality a little bit. It's kind of a lie, right? To be able to protect myself. This is my perspective on things. And I would say that in our working lives, I would say that when it comes to taxes, which just if you didn't know, it's due this week, right? But when it comes to relationships, when it comes to so many things different within life, right now, sometimes instead of people having wisdom and the willingness to actually say, no, this is truth, this is reality, I have to actually align myself with what's really going on, people feel that instead they can just make up a different truth. They can just maybe talk louder, and that in doing so, they can drown out a story that they don't think really fits with their picture of themselves, and their picture can begin to dominate. This is a huge problem. It is what eventually gets us to a point of dissonance, a place where we can't have harmony with ourselves, or maybe even with other people, because we sit back and we say, well, their story is always different. The way they see the world is so different. I can't trust them. And so there's this breakdown and there's this distance that keeps happening. We pull away from each other. We pull away maybe from something that's happening within politics, or we pull away from a coworker, because we just get to a point where we're like, I don't know what to do with how this is going. It doesn't seem like it's the reality that I want to be a part of. And that's dangerous. That's why Proverbs says that the foundation of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. That it is actually the thing that we must calibrate ourselves to in order for us in any way, shape, or form to know what our bearing is. If you're navigating a ship, you need to know with your compass which direction is true north. Or you need a constant within the stars to be able to give you a heading. Otherwise, the water around you, even some of the landmarks, they just won't be a reliable kind of anchor for you. And what Proverbs is saying again and again is that God must be that thing for all people in order for us to be able to actually have true wisdom. Because God, when he designed all things, when he brought them into existence by his wisdom, he gave all of life a certain kind of thread, a certain kind of grain, or even like a flow. And what we seek to do within wisdom is to figure out how is life actually roll out? How does it move, or what is its construction? And in that, to be able then to say, I'm going to live in line with, or in the flow of that. That's how I'll have a right life, is I'm not going against the grain of these things. And that if I see something that looks like a temptation, I would actually say, that would actually take me off of my mark. And so I'm not going to do that. But within a world where people do not revere or fear or trust God, there are 1,000 different options for what we can do as humans. But the question is not, can we do them? The question is, should we? Should these be things that we are actually pursuing? Should we? I could go and buy a whole bunch of fireworks, right? I could go out in a field. Should I? It was a lot of fun. Makes for a good story. I don't want to lose my eyesight or my jaw because I wanted to play with fireworks. There's a lot of other things I could do. So, putting that in front of us, one of the things that the fear of the Lord is being able to have God in the right size for our lives and having us within the right size. And what I mean by that is this. I played with a lot of action figures growing up. Loved action figures. And sometimes you can get really mini kind of action figures. Then you can get larger ones to scale. And then, there's people who are really hardcore into Marvel or whatever, and they have like full life-size statues in their room. I don't have that, okay? If you do, great, more power to you, right? But here's the thing. When I was playing with those action figures, I had them down to a certain size that was manageable for me. I wanted to be able to manipulate them and use them in a certain way. God, when I'm interacting with him, I need to understand his size. I need to understand my own limits and size. I need to be able to wrap my head around the fact that I have a limited life. I'm told to number my days. I have to realize that even though I'm capable, I'm not able to do everything. I actually have to depend upon this cosmic, all-creating, all-seeing God. And I have to make sure that I fear him, fear him in the right way, that I realize that he does have judgments. He is in control. And that is, unfortunately, something that our world right now has no respect or awe or reverence for God. And so the beginning of wisdom is very difficult. They're not at the start line with those of us that want to follow Jesus. They're running a different race, and that's okay. But my God is a colossal, cosmic creator, and I, when relating to him, get to relate to him as his child, but I also get to relate to him from a place of some humility and dependence. That is the beginning of wisdom. It opens me up to be able to learn even things about myself that may be very hard for me, but I know that they're coming from a place of love, they're coming from a place of truth, and they're hopefully going to shape me, and yes, the word is in the passage, discipline me to a place where I can be more obedient to the grain and flow and thread of life than what I would be otherwise. So I know that might, be a lot. I'm talking a bunch, but I'll give you a picture of what this can look like, okay? We're talking about the art of living. And right now we live in a world where, because of Google and ChatGPT and so many other forms of AI or YouTube, if you want information about something, you can seek it out very, very quickly. But having the information on something is not the skill. My son Griffin loves to play basketball. If he reads a book about basketball and gets out on the court, he probably is not any better, right? He might be a little bit, but he needs to actually train his body himself to be able to shoot, to pass, to understand the mechanics of the game. He has to practice it to embody it. And guess what? That's what wisdom is about. It is embodied living that enables us to do and be a part of what God ultimately designed for life. Here's a picture of a thing from a TV show that maybe you've heard of before, right? It's called Nailed It. It's said sarcastically, like, nailed it, right? But it's on Netflix, and basically what they do is they take amateur bakers and they give them a professional kind of creation to try and copy. And these people who have the exact same ingredients as the people who created it originally, they try it out, and in the end, nailed it, right? That's what it ends up looking like. Is it because they didn't have the same resources? No, it's because they didn't have the artistry yet to be able to pull off the creation of something beautiful. So go to the next one, right? What a beautiful unicorn cake. This one is sad, right? What about the next one? Go to it, right? It was not that hard, right? It was just a kissy face cake, right? No, I'm sorry. You messed it up. Go to the next one. Look, a beautiful, beautiful, like winter home, right? And a nice shack, right? A nice candy shack. And this last one I really like. This is a Rapunzel letting her hair down, right? But then they zoom up because check this out. This is terrifying. That's what it was supposed to look like. This is what it came out as, a horror movie in the form of a cake, right? Each one of these people, good intentions. Hopeful trying, right resources available, and yet the artistry is not there yet. The chachmah, the wisdom to actually be able to, through skill, bring about something that is a benefit to and doesn't terrify children, right? But this is what we know. This is actually from a guy named Isaac Asimov, who was a very famous science fiction writer. He said this: the saddest aspect of life right now is that science gathers knowledge faster than society gathers wisdom. And when was that written? 1988. Has life picked up in terms of speed since then? Is it possible that maybe the statement that he made was prophetic? It was telling us about the fact that we're going to be able to continue to make leaps forward again and again in terms of technology, but that even as we race to maybe be the first people to have a moon base, and then eventually to maybe be the first country to send someone to Mars, right? Or to create some kind of, consciousness within AI, or to, maybe in a positive way, create create answers to huge problems within our climate or other things. As we're racing forward within all of those things that science is allowing us to be able to do, are we at the same time developing as people to be more moral, to be more ethical, to be more socially conscious, to be more kind? Are we, as we are launching forward in terms of all of this change and rapid development, are we as humanity, are we actually growing and becoming more and more virtuous or filled with character? Do we have the wisdom to be able to apply the great amount of knowledge that we're accumulating in a way that is actually a blessing to each other and a blessing to generations to come? Or are we actually foot on the gas, moving forward at a rate that could really be harmful? I don't want to terrify you, but maybe I do want to sober you up a little bit to the fact that in the next 3 years, we're going to see more change potentially happen within human life than we've ever seen before. The next 3 years could be unbelievably rapid. In the next 15 years, we will actually have a person on a different planet. That's what they estimate, is that within 10 to 15 years, the Artemis missions will have done what they needed to do. They'll give us the info that we need back, and we will be able to have a person living on another planet. How will we approach life at that point in time? I will just say this: we have a great need for wisdom, because we might not have all the answers. We might live with great question marks, but as the church, we need to be a place of wisdom, a place of insight, a place where not only are we able to maybe have the right kind of truth, but that we actually are a community of people who apply that truth with life with one another in ways that we're proud of, in ways that are beautiful. When I talk about us having this gals night or this guys, event, what I want you to understand is that we're not doing these things just because we like to hang out. That's part of it. We like to be social. But what I'm longing for as a pastor is that we would actually build a network of relationships through these times together, where the wisdom that some of you have within yourself begins to rub off on the wisdom of others. And that whether or not we have people who are young or maybe a little bit more mature, that we would be able to share that wisdom with one another. Because guess what? I need help in my parenting. I need help in my own physical fitness or my health or what I'm going to be doing with my money or what to do with my car. I need more wisdom than just I can accumulate with this one device. And I need other people I can actually practice that life with. You can't have a basketball team or a soccer team or a football team or even an orchestra with one instrument. And so the church is meant to be this community of people who come together, gathering their chachma, their wisdom, so that we can actually do what Jesus did and seek to begin to create something that the world is desperately in need of. I hope that the church, even Friends Tustin, has a reputation as a place where people would say, oh, you want to know how to live a great life? You want to know how to understand more about what to do? You got to come to my church because there are people there. Yeah, you'll hear a sermon and you'll sing some songs, but more than that, we want to help our kids and each other to be able to be raised up in a way where we live life at its best, even in the midst of some of the real challenges that are going to come our way, even in the midst of very difficult social questions, but that we belong enough with one another that we would dare to have trust to sit down with each other and say, hey, you see this differently than I do. Tell me about that. Let's talk. Shouldn't the church be that? Shouldn't the church be the place where we can ultimately mess with questions to the point where in wisdom we know how to move forward? I have had some mentors in my life who have come along at just the right point in time. And they saved my life. But it was not just because of the transference of information to me that saved me, right? I actually needed their life on my mind, my heart, my insight, daily, to be able to shape me and form me so that I didn't screw up everything that I was trying to accomplish. There's so many cakes in my life, metaphorically, that I have done a horrible job with. But I have a couple of mentors that I can look to who came along and said, oh, Kyle, you're missing it there. That's not the way you should say that. That's not the way you should approach that. What if you tried this? Have you done this? No, don't hold it like that. Move it like this, right? And through that little coaching and instruction, I was mentored. I was apprenticed to a place of being better at life. I have more chachma now than what I did before. And every single one of us within the church are seeking to be apprentices of Jesus and his chachma, his wisdom, so that we can be a community together. But if you jump around from church to church, or if you're here just every once in a while, or if you come, you sit, you consume, the 1 hour service, and then you bounce out, I would just say to you, oh, you're missing it. Get some of the chachma that's available beforehand, or stick around after and build some more relationship. Be a part of a life group. Go to an event. Why? Is it because we want those numbers to be so high? No, it's because I want you to know other people so that you're not trying to do life alone, and so that we can begin more and more to figure out what God uniquely wants us in this city, in this area, to be creating, because that's what wisdom is for. It's so that we can actually live better lives, we can love people better within our neighborhoods, and we can give glory to God. But we miss it if we don't begin with that fear of the Lord, that respect of the Lord, and we miss it if we don't recognize that sometimes we have to make choices between one thing or another to be able to pursue wisdom.